Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. To begin with, though, we'll see eventually that the king makes a pretty dumb rule. So I have some rules here in America that are just kind of outrageous. All right. In Florida, if an elephant is left tied to a parking meter, the parking fee has to be paid just as it would for a vehicle. So if any of you are riding your elephants around and you tie them up to a parking meter, you got to pay the fine. In Kenilworth, Illinois, a rooster must step back 300 feet from any residence if he wishes to crow. So the rooster has to get out its tape measure from its back pocket, make sure it's 300 feet away from the house. And then in Alaska, it's considered an offense to push a live moose out of an airplane. Can't do that in Alaska, so. In Indiana, there's no rule against it in Indiana as far as I know. I still don't recommend it, but. All right. Those may not be too serious of laws today, but we're going to be looking at a very serious law. So to get some background on this law, let's begin with chapter 1 of Daniel. So we see right here from the get-go that King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon overthrows Jerusalem. And the king appoints a man to choose some of the young Israelites to be in the king's court. And this is the qualifications in verses 3 and 4. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youths in whom was no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered them to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. So there were these 4 young men in particular that this officer found, and that's who we're going to be talking about today. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now, because they were in Babylon, they changed their names to Babylonian names. So Daniel was Belteshazzar, Hananiah was Shadrach, Mishael was Meshach, and Azariah was Abednego. And no one really knows for sure how old these guys were. Most people say they're teenagers, maybe somewhere between 15 and 18 years old. So these 4 young men, originally from Jerusalem, are now in the court of the Babylonian king. And since they're part of the court, they can eat and drink as much wine as they want. Now, this wasn't really a usual thing for the Israelites to do, so Daniel spoke up. He told one of the officials to test the 4 of them to everyone else for 10 days. And in those 10 days, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would only eat vegetables and drink water. And the official was reluctant at first, but decided to give it a go. And at the end of the 10 days, the 4 Israelites looked healthier and they were stronger than the others, so they decided to keep them on their diet. Now, because of that, this is what verse 17 says. As for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Now, because of what God had given them, let's look at the next couple of verses. Then at the end of 10 days, which the king had specified for presenting them, the commander of the officials presented them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and out of them all not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's personal service. As for every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and conjurers who were in all his realm. Now we see here, and really throughout the whole Bible, that when we obey God and do what he says, he's going to bless us. Now, I can remember a time when Brittany and I were first married. We had just found our first apartment in Newport, Kentucky, and we were so excited. And after a couple months, we had some unexpected bills pop up, and we weren't sure if we were going to have enough money to pay everything off. And we had a conversation of, well, do we tithe to the church or not? If we don't, we'll have enough to pay everything off. But if we do, we might not. So we decided to tithe, even though we wouldn't be able to pay all of our bills. We trusted that God was going to take care of all of our needs. And sure enough, at the end of the month, because we put God first, we were able to pay off everything. Now, that's just one out of the many ways that God has blessed us. And my point is this: when we're doing the will of God, what He's calling us to do, He's gonna bless us. Now, I'm sure these 4 guys, they didn't really feel all that blessed. They were just taken away from all their friends and family into a new foreign country. But these guys decided to keep their trust in God, even though it may have seemed like He wasn't with them anymore. So this exact situation might not happen to us today, being taken off to another country. I mean, maybe it will, but probably not. But when we're put in situations where it seems like God is no longer with us, we need to remember that He's always there, no matter what. He will never leave us. In fact, He'll bless the situation that we're in. So this also reminds me of the story of Job. In fact, in our Sunday school class last week, we started looking at the first 3 chapters of Job. And when you read those first 3 chapters, it's just depressing, really. He lost all of his property, his children, and most of his servants. Now, I'm not a parent yet, but I cannot imagine losing a child of mine, much less he had 10 kids, all of them in the same day. In Job 1, it says, a messenger came to him to tell him that his oxen and donkeys had been stolen, and his servants were killed, except for the one messenger. And then it says, as he was still speaking, another also came in. So the person hadn't even told Job the whole situation yet, and the next person comes in and tells him about a tragedy. This happens 3 times. Someone's talking, someone else comes in and interrupts. The last one told Job about how his sons and daughters had all been killed while they were feasting at the oldest brother's house. So let's look how Job responds in Job 1, verses 20 through 22. Then Job arose and tore his robes and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground and worshipped. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Through all this, Job did not sin, nor did he blame God. Now, there's things that we go through that are tough today. I can't imagine losing everything that Job lost within minutes of each other. And when something minor happens to us, sometimes we're quick to blame God. Job doesn't do that here. He lost everything, and he still didn't do that. We need to have a faith like Job. But then the next thing that happens is Job gets covered from the heel of his foot to the top of his head, covered in boils. He still does not curse God. Let's look at what chapter 2, verses 9 and 10 says. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. If the book ended right here, we would still have an awesome example for us today on how we should view adversity. Job is still giving glory to God for everything that happened to him. And because Job did not curse God through all of his suffering, God blesses Job even more. Job is a perfect example of how when we are facing adversity, when we put our trust in God, He gets the glory no matter what. All right, now let's go back to Daniel. So in chapter 2, the king has a dream that absolutely no one can figure out. And the king decides that all the wise men, including our 4, are going to get killed. Now, they didn't ask our 4 youth, our Israelites, because of how young they were. So Daniel goes up to one of the officials and says, hey, I can interpret this dream that the king had. And so he prays to God that night, and the next day he goes into the king and interprets the dream for the king. And the king was so grateful that he promoted Daniel. So let's look at what the king says in verses 47 through 49. It says, the king answered Daniel and said, surely your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief perfect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel made requests of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon, while Daniel was still at the king's court. So I think it's really interesting and awesome that when the king realizes that this God of Daniel is the true God, he makes sure to recognize him. So because of God giving Daniel this wisdom, he's promoted even further. And Daniel doesn't forget his friends. They all get promotions as well. So at the very beginning of the next chapter, the king, he had just given God this really high praise. But then the king quickly remembers how awesome he is. So he decides to make a giant statue of himself. Now it's huge. It's 90 feet tall by 9 feet wide. So 9 feet wide, so this is about a 6-foot wingspan, we'll say. So about 3 feet longer than that, wider than that, and 90 feet tall. That'd be like 9 basketball hoops on top of each other. Or, okay, stay with me here. If you cloned me 14 times, so 15 times total, I'm about 5'10 3/4, which is basically about 5'11", which is almost 6 foot. So we'll just say 6 foot, okay? If you stacked me from the feet to the head, I would still be about a foot shorter than this statue. So there's the statue, and there's me stacked on top of myself 15 times. Almost, there we go. I would still be shorter than this statue. So this statue is absolutely massive. And so he makes a decree that when you hear music, everyone must bow down and worship it. Verse 6 says, "But whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire." So these Hebrew guys, they knew what the consequences would be if they didn't bow down. They were in the king's court. They knew what decrees he had made. So but they kept their focus on God, and they didn't bow down to the statue. So of course there's going to be tattletales in the kingdom. They go to the king, and the king brings them in and says, "Is it true? You really aren't going to bow down to my image? Here, I'll give you one more shot at this." So let's look at verse 15 now. I like the challenge that the king is going to give here in a second. "Now, if you're ready at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, and bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image I have made, very well. So when the music plays and you bow down, great. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire." And this is the challenge I like. "And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands?" I know we've seen people challenge God before. And this really reminds me of the story of Elijah when he's trying to show the people of Israel that God is the Lord of everything and not Baal. So Elijah has the prophets of Baal build an altar to Baal, but they don't light it. They have to pray to God and pray to Baal to light this altar. And so after hours of them praying and shouting, it never lit. So then Elijah did the same thing. He built an altar, but it was to God. And then he built a trench, and then he says, "All right, let's cover this thing in water." So they covered it in water, and he's like, "All right, let's do it again." So they covered it in water again. He's like, "For safe measure, let's do it one more time." So they did it one more time. They covered it in water 3 times. And then he prayed to God to light the fire. God lit the offering, but let's see what it says in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 38. It says, "Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench." So God was really showing his power here. He was showing that he really is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. He not only had the power to consume the offering that was there, even though it was drenched in water, but he consumed the whole altar. He consumed the wood. He consumed the stones. They're not very flammable. He consumed the dust and the water. He was just showing how powerful he is. And this is who King Nebuchadnezzar wants to go up against. I wonder who's going to win. Well, I'm not going to spoil it. I think we already know who wins. But let's look at the response of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego back over in Daniel. Daniel 3, verses 16 and 17. It says, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, 'O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. That was a shot directly at the king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Wow, what a response. They came through in a big way. They knew that no matter what was going to happen to them, God was going to be receiving the glory. Well, that doesn't make the king very happy. In fact, he gets really mad. He gets so mad that he decides to turn up the heat on the furnace 7 times the usual heat. It was so hot that the guard that threw them in actually died just by standing on the outside of the furnace. And then, so they were tied up, and now they're in the furnace, and now they're walking around untied, and there's a 4th person with them. So now, some people say that the extra person was Jesus. Others say it was an angel. We don't really know who it was for sure, but we do know that this person was sent from God. Now, they pull him out, and the officers are looking over them. So let's look at verse 27 here. It says, the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on their bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their head singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. So, clearly they weren't liars because their pants didn't catch on fire. Anyway. It says that when they came out, they didn't even smell like smoke. Think about that for a second. Now, I love campfires. I love being around a campfire, cooking stuff on the campfire. It's fun. But when you're around a campfire, even for just a little bit, you get the smell of smoke on you. You don't even need to be around the campfire for very long, and you still smell like smoke. It just kind of happens. So these guys were so close to the fire that they were literally in it, and they didn't even smell like smoke. That was just God showing how powerful He truly is again. These guys were inside the fire, and not only did they not have any burns or anything damaged on them, but they didn't even have the smell of fire. So the king, who had already declared that the God of Daniel was the true God, declares it again in verse 28. It says, Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielding up their bodies, so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God. And because the king had said that, he decides to make a decree in the very next verse. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, inasmuch as there is no God who is able to deliver in this way. I think the king finally gets it. In fact, in the beginning of the very next chapter, it starts out with the king giving even more praise to God. Now, this is a pretty severe punishment, but he finally understands that the God of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is the true and living God. Now, before Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went into the furnace, I kind of wonder what they were thinking. I know what I would have been thinking. Number one, I don't like heat. When we're in the car and it's cold outside, I like to keep the defrost on. I don't like to have the fan blowing on me because I just don't like the heat in my face. Brittany's she hates that. But anyway, that's a whole other topic. I'm not going to get into right now. So I don't really like heat. But I would have also been thinking, okay, God, anytime you want to deliver us from this king and from this furnace, that would be great. God, are you even still there? But these 3 guys didn't do that. They knew that no matter what, God was going to be with them. So this is, I guess, what I'm trying to get at. No matter what, God is always with us. I really like how David put it in Psalm 13. In the beginning of the psalm, he starts out with adversity, and then he eventually praises God at the end of it. It says, How long, O Lord, Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in all my heart all the day? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken. But I have trusted in your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. Sometimes we can feel like God isn't there, just like David did here. But we need to continue to give praise and glory to God through every situation. Now, as Christians, we should already know this because of what Jesus told his disciples right before he ascended into heaven when he said, and lo, I am with you always, even to the very end of the age. So as Christians, we all have the Holy Spirit after we're baptized into Christ. For those people who are outside of Christ, this same power that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had can be on your side. First, you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Then you repent of your sins. To repent means you're living a certain way, and then you completely do a 180, and you start serving the Lord. And then you confess, saying that Jesus really is the Christ, the Son of God. And then you get baptized for the forgiveness of your sins, and then you receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. Now, we may not be walking into a literal furnace today like they had to do, but maybe it's a figurative furnace. We're going to face hard times as Christians and non-Christians because of sin, as Christians because of what we believe. But when we know that we have the power of God on our side, and we know that he can get us through any situation. Now, as the praise team comes on up here, back on stage, our invitation song is Lead Me to the Cross. Now, I really like this song for an invitation because so often we get in the way of ourselves when we should be going back to the cross every day. And if you need to make a decision to get today, come on down and we can talk to you. Let's stand and sing.